He was having trouble finding the link, and I think Caroline was trying to help him with that.
Yes, I sent it to him.
Okay. Morning, Tim.
Tom? Hey, Matt, maybe you could answer this. I've got a question just about the archiving of the JTAB meetings, and I'm wondering if we have that set up so that members of the public could go back and review meetings, especially since they're on Zoom. It's a lot easier and different than, you know, when we're doing the handwritten minutes and all that kind of stuff, which I think have always been available. But are these Zoom meetings being archived somewhere?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer for the JTAB purposes. We are archiving all of the other ones, and so we should be consistent with that moving forward.
But these are open meetings, so it just occurred to me, if they're open meetings, and if somebody did want to go back and say, oh, what happened, you know, a month ago, or why are they talking about this now, it would be a really easy way to access.
Yeah, I can see we are recording it, and so Andrew, this would be a good thing to couple, you know, with the minutes, the press agenda, with the previous meetings, to couple the recording. That's a good idea.
Yeah, and I have all of the recordings. They automatically get saved to my computer. I've been having trouble getting it able to upload. I've tried YouTube, and the file size is way too large for it to process. So I've been trying to figure out ways to make it smaller. I don't know if we have to split it up into 2 parts, but so I do have the recordings, and I've been trying to get it onto YouTube, but every time I upload it, I get a message from YouTube saying it was too large to process.
So just talk to Linda Yeager about it, because they're doing that with, you know, hour-plus long meetings all the time that they copy over from Zoom to YouTube and to Facebook.
Okay, yep, I will talk to Linda and see how we can get it up there. But yeah,
Andrew, for all of the past meetings, we have a location on our website that we're storing these now.
Yeah, on our JTAB page, we have the last few months. Before then, I don't know where we were storing them.
No, that's okay. Do you want to, since you're the one sharing, is that your screen that you're sharing?
Yeah.
You want to just drive us there real quick so everyone can see? And I understand what happened 2 years ago is, you know, what happened 2 years ago. We got to try to find those records and post at least the paper materials if we have them, but just to make sure that everyone knows where you're putting them, you know, from here on out, that we have a new standard and a new commitment to transparency and working together. So you want to just drive us there?
Yeah, I'm on a browser right now. Does everyone still see the notes?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that.
And I keep all this stuff in the same location, so.
One of the things that might be good, oh, never mind. I see what you're doing. Never mind.
Okay, so yeah, on parkcitytransit.org and then JTAB. Then under JTAB agenda, there's previous meeting minutes. And then, so it looks like we just have a few that were previously up here, but I know we have somewhere archived on the, excuse me, city drive. I know we have other meeting minutes, so we can dig through those and get them on the website as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good idea.
Okay, I think we have everybody. So we'll go ahead and get started if that's all right. This is Kim Feldstead. I am the transit manager, and welcome to the May 19th JTAB meeting. We did put out my email address for public comment, and to date I have not received any public comment for this meeting. So with that, I'm going to go on and approve the minutes from last meeting.
Do you need a motion from that for that, or are we doing any process like that for these meetings?
I believe we do need a motion. I don't know if there was any comments or changes before we move to approve them. Does anyone have any concerns with last meeting minutes?
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from April 21st, 2020.
Second.
Okay, with that, the meeting minutes are approved.
Oh, you need a vote.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Any opposed? Sounds like it was unanimous.
Or at least 2-0.
I do apologize, I skipped the step of roll call. We do have everyone present, but Cindy, if you would go through and do a quick roll call for us, please.
Advisory members in attendance from Summit County, we have Tom Fisher, Kim Carson, Chris Robinson, Carolyn Rodriguez, and Jamie Danzy. Park City, we have Councilman Tim Henney and Steve Joyce. Park City staff in attendance, Matt Diaz, Margaret Plain, Sarah Pierce, Kim Bilstead, Jerry Benson, Vinnie Nguyen, Brian Beckstred, Scott Birmingham, Robbie Smoot, Alexis Burzen, and myself, Cindy Stockley. No public so far.
Okay, well, did we miss anyone?
There is a member of the public.
Okay.
Mike, I'll add Mike Lewis.
Great. Okay, well, with that, I will go ahead and share my screen for the next discussion item of the 2021 fiscal year draft transit budget. So give me a moment to share my screen. Andy, it looks like I need you to stop sharing for me to share.
And can we ask if you're not speaking to mute? There's a lot of feedback.
Okay, can everyone see the screen there? It says transportation fund. Okay, got a thumbs up. Oops, sorry. Okay, so last JTAB, we did have a conversation about, our concern with the overall revenue shortfalls that we are anticipating. And, it's a very fluid situation and hard to predict. It's something that we actually monitor day by day to ensure we're putting out the net.
Am I the only one that can't hear Kim?
I can't hear either.
Kim, I don't know if you heard that, but we can't hear you.
Kim has left the building.
She is looks like she's gonna sign back in.
Okay, I don't know what you guys missed. I'm sorry, my internet failed me. Okay, so did you hear the part about the 5.4 prediction of shortfall in revenue?
No, we didn't hear any of that.
Okay,
Start over.
let me start over then. Sorry.
I was assuming, Kim, that you had said something about how you'd figured everything out and there's no problems.
Oh, I did, but I don't know if I can repeat my brilliance that I said while I didn't have internet. So I'll try. Hold on.
But do you want to? Can you guys see her screen? I can't see her screen.
Oh, do I
anymore.
need to share again?
Okay.
Okay, I guess it booted me out. Okay, how's that? You got it?
Can
Okay.
see it and hear you.
Good. Okay, so what we wanted to do today was just talk about a strategy that we have to overcome what we're anticipating is going to be a $5.4 million shortfall in the budget due to loss of revenue. As you know, transit is mainly funded by sales tax, so what we're seeing in the economy is definitely going to have a direct impact on the revenue that we have to operate. And of course, it is due to the unfortunate pandemic that we're facing right now. So we wanted to get your feedback on this part of the plan prior to incorporating it into our full budget. We kind of feel it needs to be like a two-step process, and we're hoping that you would be able to meet again later next week to review our entire budget, which would include our capital project adjustments that are part of this plan to come up with a 5.4 million. And we could review those in more detail next week. So we have several factors that we're managing. You know, it's a day-to-day thing that we have to look at with this pandemic to see what service can we put out there. You know, what is the right amount that will serve our public, but at the same time help us realize some cost savings, because we just don't have the revenue that we've had in prior years to operate. So it really is something that we monitor on a daily basis and try to make the right decision. You know, the fact that we have social distancing throws a whole new variable into that decision. And that is something that we're working on right now to see if there's any flexibility going forward with the county and the health department so that we can make sure we realize these efficiencies. So basically with that, what you're looking at here on my screen is just an overview of the categories where we would see impacts to the budget because of this loss of revenue. So let me just move this over. So basically, you know, we've got the estimate, as I said, 5.4 million in shortfall. That is an estimate. Nobody really has a crystal ball and can figure this out 100%. But we've come up with a plan based on that estimate to try to match it without having to dip into the transportation fund. So the hugest thing we can do is impact this through service. That's what an operations budget mainly consists of. And we are anticipating that we will receive some CARES Act funding. We went very conservative on this estimate and with a 1.5 million, but I do believe we're going to get more than that, but we wanted to be conservative so that we weren't relying heavily on that funding because it could be delayed. And then there is the capital deferral that we would discuss in greater detail later at 2.7 million to get us to the total of 5.4.
Kim, can I ask on that chart, I know that the finance department has been kind of doing their cut of what they expect the sales tax drop will be, you know, and how it would roll back up. Is this consistent with that? Are you using the same numbers they are?
Yes, we are. However, those numbers have been changing and tweaking. So they have had different estimates at different times, but this is the number that we have both landed on.
Okay, and just to make sure that I'm kind of hearing the same thing from both groups, the forecast that they had right now was realistic, but closer to kind of, I think, more of a best case than a worst case. Is that how you see it? Because I know we're, you know, coming back together in 90 days, you know, after we approve the real budget, or the provisional budget, that will come back in 90 days with an expectation that things might need a second round of adjustments, and in all likelihood it would be cuts. Is that what you're thinking as well?
Yes, this is a provisional budget for 90 days that we would want to come back and revisit. Yeah, the same philosophy applies.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just want to make sure we're all in sync.
So I'll weigh in if I could real quick, just for the benefit of the county council members, and forgive me if I'm a broken record and you've heard this before, but because of the way our fiscal year lines up comparatively to yours, we're operating with a provisional budget, as Steve just mentioned, which gives us a 60 to 90 day period of which we've committed to come back to city council when we have more certainty on revenue projections. So our hiccup is that right now we're trying to project what our year's going to look like the next 12 months. And there's so much uncertainty that I don't want to come in with the city manager's budget and recommend year over year a 50% reduction in services when I don't know if we have a V-shaped recovery or what the line looks like yet. So I asked for a concession from council about a month ago and said, there's sort of two ways we could go. One is we can do an incremental budget or provisional budget, and the other is I can come in right now with a really drastic reduction. Would you give us the concession so we don't have to start slashing services immediately? That being said, operationally, we've committed to being in full recession mode as an organization. So that means hiring freezes, leaving existing positions vacant, rigorous operational controls of any non-essential expenditures, non-essential capital projects. So it's a little bit of an amalgamation of a projection that has a considerable reduction in our operating budget, in addition to operational constraints during these next 60 to 90 days. And my presumption, as Kim said, is we have the same commitment to you as we do to our own council and just to the general public, is that this is intentionally provisional when we have a better idea of what December might look like, or February, or even November. And so that's the reason we have this sort of walk before we run approach to our budget. The one part of this that's been, I wouldn't call it difficult, that's been a real hot topic is how much federal funding to rely upon. Obviously, we work really closely with Jim Barker, and now your staff does as well, and we're getting regular updates about federal funding opportunities, stimulus opportunities. And actually, I think our budget folks are probably more optimistic than I am. So they would have put more money in this budget in terms of federal assistance and CARES money and other stimulus money than I authorized, because I didn't want to be within this 60 to 90 day period too optimistic that this money is going to come flowing in from the government and we're going to get all this relief. Now, I am hopeful. We have 2 lobbyists in DC that are fully activated and working really, really hard and are monitoring things and are making sure that we're front of the line for rural assistance money. And
who's the second lobbyist, Matt?
So we have Jim Barker, as you know, because you and Kim were on the phone with us the other day. But the other one is Ryan Levitt. And
well, we know Ryan.
You know Ryan? Okay.
Yeah, he works with Jim. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. And so, Ryan and Jim are actually, they're in partnership now, but they're also, that's his son-in-law. And but Ryan worked for about 10 years for different members of the Utah delegation. So it's a really strong team. So where was I? So intentionally, we were being pessimistic with the federal relief money, and it's fully intentional. But we hope through Ryan Levitt, Jim Barker, and then also with Jerry Benson's contacts with UDOT and UTA, that with the rural assistance money, we're going to be at the front of the line and really aggressive to get that money. So to Steve's point, Steve, I'd say this is maybe a little bit more pessimistic than the rest of the city's kind of first foray into this provisional budget. Just that I kind of pushed back the budget folks a little bit and said, no, we need to be more pessimistic in this area.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions on the revenue assumptions before I move on? Great. So to combat this, we do want to maximize the Federal CARES Act resources, but as we said, we're being conservative about our assumptions there. And we get the biggest bang for our buck by reducing transit service and our staffing levels. Now, I did come before this group last time and talk about retaining some of our seasonal operators beyond what we currently need, because it's going to be an efficiency that we will realize as things start to ramp back up, estimating that it costs about $7,000 to train an operator, and that's a conservative estimate. I think that we will actually realize the savings by holding on to these folks, and we are repurposing them, to help us with extra cleaning and customer service out there in the system during the pandemic time while we're in orange. And we want to implement operating efficiency improvements. This is something that, regardless, was always kind of part of the plan, and we just need to step it up where, our service runs all day It's peak service is that where you could really realize some savings. You don't necessarily need the same amount of service all day. So we've been looking at some possible changes that we could recommend that
Oops.
Can't hear you.
Kim, you just disappeared again.
Hey, maybe while she's reconnecting, Tom and Caroline, I'm curious about something. You know, on the first slide that showed revenues, you know, one of the revenues being presented is your expense. You know, it's the county contracting for service, and that raises some questions in my mind about the level of service and the routes that are currently being run. I think it's fascinating to see that there's one giant route called Citywide that's, you know, operating throughout the city in a big huge loop, and we've gotten rid of, you know, the orange, the purple, the green, the blue, the red, the yellow. We just got Citywide, whatever color that is. And then I look through and there's white, you know, of course, so that's kind of a shared and spine backbone route that is great for everybody. But then there's the lime, the pink, the brown, and I'm assuming that you all drove the decision on what routes should be run in the county. But I wanted to check that assumption. I want to know that you guys have said, you know, this is going to cost us so much money to run these routes, or we want to spend no more than this amount of money, and these are the routes that we have determined are essential. Or how that came about. I mean, I'm just really curious about how we arrived at these routes and this level of service. I think it's, you know, we're on the right track. I'm just curious about that aspect of it.
So let me start out that answer, Tim. Thanks for that, because it certainly is a great question. I would say that it's been a collaborative process because you know, the operator expertise of your folks certainly plays into that. Our routes are slightly different because there's very little redundancy. You know, there's some based on routes that run 224, but when they get off of 224, there's no redundancy. So there's not a way to cut a route per se. But then it gets to frequency, and and your staff has been very good about advising us on levels of frequency that make sense based on what they're seeing in ridership, which we know, of course, is way down. So I'll let Caroline follow up with that with more detail.
Yeah, I would just say that things have been moving so quickly, of course, that we've definitely been looking to the expertise of your staff to advise us on where they think the most effective changes would be. The one thing that we are looking at is, especially with the brown, as everybody knows, it's a low performing route, and whether we're trying to balance, do we make some really significant changes there and potentially that's less revenue for Park City, or do we just maintain as Park City has suggested? And we haven't brought that up with the staff yet because actually we've just started looking at it this morning. But I think, especially in terms of the brown, that'll be a discussion among your staff and our staff, is how do we balance the resources that the system as a whole needs to run? Again, do we need to significantly cut some services in the county to make it work, if that makes sense? Do you see what I'm trying? Do you understand what I'm trying to get at with that balance in terms of cutting back this revenue that for you is a billed service?
Well, yeah, but I mean, this gets to the point of, you know, who's making the decision on what gets spent, what's essential, and who, you know, makes the final analysis, and then an informed decision on what routes are going to be run. Just because it's a revenue source for the city and it's a route that runs in the county and exclusively in the county, and yes, it adds to the overall holistic well-being, health, robustness of the system. But this is an opportunity to kind of drill down on each of these routes and each of these what is essential, what is not essential, what is required. The white is required for the overall system. Nobody would argue that the white is not. The brown, I don't know, is the brown required? That's kind of your call. And I wouldn't let, revenues that are necessary to Park City's transit system be guiding that decision or even that conversation. It should be part of the conversation, but I don't see that being a determinative factor at all.
And the corollary to Tim's great question is, does the county have the money to pay for the services? I mean, the city in the transit district is just counting on those as revenues. But if we had the discussion on our side that, yeah, we're down for it, we got the money.
So
I think these are all great points, and I would say that our staff collectively probably has not had the time at this point to drill down, as you say, Tim. I think, as Matt has said, never waste a good crisis. This is one of those times where we really have an opportunity. The county's trying to get through the emergency and a lot of other stuff right now, and then of course the city is trying to get through budget. I think we're going to have some time as we get into June to actually look at that stuff.
And I'll add, Tim, if I can, there's a component to this plan whereby our staff will be working with the county staff in terms of looking at particular routes and other ways to run service, different types of service, under the guise of what Tom just said. So there's a component of this plan that absolutely looks at route efficiency, ridership levels, because we need to get to a point where we are so constrained where we're back in that guiding principle of trying to just provide core commitments to the community, where we can't, where Park City can't provide this extra level of circulator or just, go up to Empire Pass, and that's a nice have, but is that essential? Because it's not ridden maybe by a lot of workforce, where the white is more essential. So we won't waste the emergency, and that's part of this plan, is trying to make sure that we're looking at our routes being more efficient. And I know that Jerry and Kim and them are already working on that.
Well, let me just make a final statement on kind of what I think the role of JTAB should be. I think it should be exploring these types of topics and not making a decision on them, but fully vetting them amongst this working group. So I don't want to waste the crisis, the opportunity that exists with the crisis. I do understand that everybody's got a lot on their plates, and Tom, I'm not pushing to, have it at the next meeting or anything. But if we have to, have some extra JTAB meetings to really make some progress on what I see as a core component conversation around transit, then I think we should take advantage of doing that and convene the group as often as we need to have this sort of a conversation. This is a much better and more productive area to explore than an update on what the ridership was, in my opinion. And I mean, we want to know what the ridership's doing, of course, because of the circumstance that we find ourselves in. But in a normal time, ridership is great. I mean, that can be done really quickly. This takes time. This takes full vetting, a lot of discussion amongst us before we can go back to our council. And that's what I'd like to see this group doing in the future. That's it. Thanks.
Hey, I'm back. I'm going to have Andy share the slides because it seems to be overwhelming my internet. So Andy, if you would scroll down a little bit. I apologize for all technical difficulties. I think the next slide. And then go to one more. I believe that's where we lost contact. So it sounds like you had a good conversation about route efficiencies when I was trying to get reconnected. Our hours of service is another area that we could look at. We have drastically cut back the hours we're running out there at night right now during the pandemic and switched it to an on-demand option. So we still have, transit options for folks. And we're just seeing, some people are utilizing the on-demand in the PM, but it's pretty low numbers. So, of course, we're in a different situation than we will be going forward, hopefully. But I think we need to look at that. I think that we're possibly running too much service too late at night, and possibly even in some early morning trips we could cut back on. So That's an efficiency we want to look at deeper. I talked about the peak hour service, non-driving paid time. That's where we want to realize more efficiencies with the operators on how we cut them to go take lunch or even pick up their work. You know, if you can eliminate deadheading where you're not picking up passengers, but you're paying an operator, you're paying for fuel or electricity to get to a certain spot. That's where some efficiencies can be found. And that goes into the driver scheduling as well. That goes hand in hand. We had an opportunity before all this hit to actually allow operators to pick the work they wanted to do. And it was kind of a big change for our group, but it was met with really favorable responses. Initially, everybody thought it would be pretty boring to be doing the same piece of work day after day, but most discovered that it helped them get better at the route. You know, we had less off routes and better customer service because you get to know your customers. So all these things can tie in nicely to that sort of system where they actually can see the work ahead of time and pick it, and we've got those efficiencies built into it. And then some of our clock in, clock out procedures are a different area where we think we can get some efficiencies. I understand the county also utilizes ADP, which does some rounding of clock in, clock out, and we think that if we can get to just real time clock in and clock out procedures, we can save some money there. And then overtime has always been an ongoing thing where we've had to rely quite heavily on it to meet the demand. And I just think now is a chance we have to get appropriately staffed and not rely on overtime. And we're not going to have to staff up to the levels that we needed to in the past in the near future. Anyways, hopefully those days will come back, but I don't see that happening within the next year. Are there any questions about any of the efficiencies that we've discussed on this slide?
Hey, Kim, one that wasn't discussed on the slide, but just as an observation, I've been noticing that it seems I haven't seen a diesel bus go, around the route where I live, and I see a lot of buses go by during the day, but I've just noticed that we seem to be running a lot of electrics. Is that perception or reality? And I'm sure that the cost savings of running an electric versus a diesel is very marginal compared to route alignments and frequencies and overtime. But is there something that we're gaining from doing that?
I wish I could say it was a big strategy. However, I think that's more perception than reality because we have been basing our pullout on the shields that we have that protect the operators and what buses they've been installed on. And our Gillig diesel fleet was actually the first part of the fleet that we had a shield that would fit. So I'm glad you're seeing some electrics out there, but it's been more just as we've been able to install those protections on the buses and run them in accordance with our plan that we've shared with the health department.
Hey, Kim, this is Sarah. Do you want to also talk about the social distancing stuff that you've been working on?
Yeah, so right now, part of our plan and our commitment to the county health department was that we would ensure 6-foot distances between our passengers, which means really we can only have about 8 to 10 people on a bus. And we've actually marked the seats where they should sit to ensure that. Which is obviously not efficient when you're running, a 35, 40-foot bus down the street. You typically want to maximize the amount of people you can fit in that area, but given the situation we have at hand, that's what we've been doing right now to ensure people are not getting sick. But other properties across the country in places where they really just can't ensure that, like New York and so forth, they are just requiring their passengers to wear masks. And so that's something that I'm putting together a memo for the county to take to the health department and see if they would sign off on that change, because as we start to see more riders, it's going to get harder and harder to ensure that distancing. And we're also going to lose our cost savings quite quickly as well. So that remains to be seen, but go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say from the county and the health department perspective, the governor's plan really and phase guidelines don't touch transit and public transportation at all.
Right. I think
or late last week, and I'm sure you're doing the same thing, about uh, um, looking at FTA and APTA standards to support what we're trying to do, and I think that's perfectly appropriate.
correct. So hopefully that change will be
So
acceptable.
Kim, is there a new, to Tom's point, is there a new APTA standard that's out or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of right now. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, not that I'm aware of right now. I would need to research that. I've just been on calls with other properties to kind of get a take on what they've been doing. And some are doing what we're doing with the 6-foot distancing, and others are utilizing masks.
Okay. No, because I know, Tom, I heard you on the radio today say that in all, correct me if I'm wrong, all county facilities now, you're requiring, is it not only staff and public, it's public too?
It is public as well.
All right, so yeah, we probably need to have just a discussion too about trickle down effect and whether we want to make that something for our own buses.
And the reason I mean, as you heard on the radio, the reason we're doing it is we've got so many services that few people do, that with a lot of public contact, we can't afford to lose our staff to that. And some of it is really coming down to the elections. If we lose election staff this year, we're in big trouble.
All right. Okay, so we will review, Kim, if we can commit to reviewing the latest APTA standards and otherwise, and then being consultative with the health department about if we feel like some additional regulation is necessary on our public transportation buses. It's something we can consider as a policy decision.
Okay. Yes, and we would definitely present that to you before taking it any further. So I will get something together soon. Are there any other questions on this slide?
Hey, Tom, along those lines with the health department, anecdotally, have you seen any association that concerns you with contact tracing? And I know we're not doing a bunch of contact tracing, but when somebody gets ill, are we hearing anecdotally, oh, I was on a bus with 8 other people? Are there concerns that would lead you to think that participating in transit has contributed to the spread, or is that something that really isn't on the radar at this point?
I don't know of anything anecdotally that would say either way. What as we keep learning about the spread of this, indoors versus outdoors, there's a difference, it seems. And then from what I'm hearing from the health department folks is that casual contact or casual passing, short term, just passing in short periods of time is obviously less risky than spending a lot of time with people. So I think there's some general things there we can apply to this.
Yeah, and I say anecdotally because I know when our new cases are 1, 0, 2, 4, 0, 1, 2, it's like, well, there's not a lot, there's not a spike, there's nothing that's happened that's caused concern and extra scrutiny. So it's hard.
I would say that though that's coupled with the fact that we haven't been moving around a lot in our community, generally speaking, and as workforce starts to move around a bit more, as visitors start to move around more, we'll just have to keep track of it, and the contact tracing will be important.
Thanks.
The unfortunate piece about that is having people on buses. That's going to be a really difficult thing to track because you don't know who's been on and who hasn't unless it's very regular riders. So we'll have to see. Like Tom said, I mean, the new information coming out is talking specifically about the length of time you're exposed to somebody. So typically you're not on a bus for very long. It may be interesting to look more at the Salt Lake City PC route. That's probably the longest. But.
Okay.
Isn't that Right Amigos app that you all purchased, isn't that supposed to be tracking bus riders?
I believe Alexis is on the call. I don't know, Alexis, if you could answer that.
I don't want to take too
does-
much time on that. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, it does have that capability. We haven't really rolled it out publicly. It's primarily to track employees of both the resorts and then Park City Municipal as we've onboarded. We haven't pushed anything out recently, but we could try and track that, although those employees are not really traveling much, my understanding.
Okay, thanks.
Kim, before you leave this slide, some of the conversation that Councilman Henney raised while you were disconnected was how JTAB can be more effective in reviewing and analyzing and giving input to service design and service changes. So I think it's worth pointing out that the city's thinking at this point is that there will be a significant reduction in winter service to the tune of as much as 30%. And so that's a conversation that will need to be taken to JTAB sometime later this summer to make sure that those service reductions make sense to the county. And the county is, well, the county and the city are both really driving service changes that fit their priorities. So while there are a lot of unknowns, and especially the social distancing issue is an unknown, part of your plan is to make a pretty significant reduction in service miles and hours going into the winter. So we certainly need to have the county thinking about that and driving that as much as possible.
Correct.
And for what it's worth, I think that's really important to start communicating soon, because if the hotels and the resorts and everybody are going to be ramping up with some expectation of workforce being able to get to the resorts in kind of what I'll call the traditional way, then they need to start planning if that's not going to be the case, and maybe backstopping some of it themselves. But I think we need to, I know the world is changing dramatically very quickly right now, but that's when we can't wait till November to start sharing with people.
I was wondering too whether, back to Tim's good question about have we really thought through the county routes. I hate to see us postpone that decision for a long period of time, because in the meantime, we're burning money. I was wondering if there's any way to compress that process such that when we meet again in a couple of weeks, as was initially suggested, that JTAB have a special meeting, that we could be prepared to discuss that instead of saying, oh, well, we're going to deal with it in the summer.
So can I make a proposal for your consideration? Would be maybe we try to next week, as we suggested, come back and fully review the detailed budget. Once we get these kind of strategies, we get a head nod on these strategies that we've outlaid here. But to your point, Chris, maybe we can commit to, next JTAB meeting, hypothetical, I'd have to ask Jerry and Kim and them if they could put their heads around it, but we could spend a significant amount of time once we get beyond the budget and this little 60 to 90 day period about having a deeper dive on our routes, their efficiencies, and then any next step that needs to be done in terms of county or city analysis or collaborative analysis about being more efficient, what winter service might be like. We can begin that conversation as a group. But I don't want that conversation to prevent this body having the opportunity to view the strategies today, view the actual map and blueprint next week. Because what's happening now is I have a concurrent process with my council and their budget that has to be kind of memorialized mid-June. And I'm trying to get JTAB to review our guiding principles and strategies, then give you the map and blueprint of this $5.5 million reduction. I don't negate the importance, though, long-term, particularly for the next 12 months, of route efficiency, route analysis. That type of planning needs to be done concurrently. So I'm just saying maybe we can do a little bit of both, but my priority is trying to get this budget hurdle overcome, and then immediately I guess I'm willing to add resources to that or allocate resources to that. Does that sound conceptually okay?
I guess I don't have the slide in front of me, and I don't know if Andrew or Kim is running the deck, but could somebody go to the slide that shows the contribution to the budget, this budget you're wanting to approve that's coming from the county? Is that the regional transit revenue that's down 37%, that 5,386,000?
Mm-hmm.
How was that? I mean, I tried to hear what Kim and Tom said as to how that number was derived, but it seems like if we're setting a budget based on that number, that before we commit to that number, we ought to be confident that that's the number we want you to bill us for.
Yeah, I would say, Chris, that we are.
How did that number come about?
Yeah, we collaborated on that number between Matt Levitt and the budget folks in Park City. So we're comfortable with that right now, based on what we know right now. And that number also goes directly to shared services. So in my impression, but yeah, we're comfortable with where they're at right now.
Was the number driven by Matt Levitt saying that I anticipate the revenue from various sales taxes that feed transit are going to be down by approximately this amount, therefore here's the money we have? Or was it driven by a strategic analysis of saying we, not starting with the end in mind, meaning how much money we have to spend, but by saying here are the routes we need?
Was it
revenue driven, or was it a strategic expense driven?
I think it was revenue driven. Is that fair, Matt?
I mean, I think what I think has probably happened is Matt said, I think we're going to be down by this amount. We only have this much to spend. And so we put that much in the budget, which begs the question of whether that's the right amount to spend. And Matt Dias is saying we want to get a budget approved soon, wants to go to his council, do all these things. And we're just taking it for granted that county's got that much money, which Matt Levitt says we do, but whether or not that's a good place to spend that money hasn't been investigated.
You're absolutely right, Chris. And I think let me anticipate what Matt's going to say. They are also planning, the Park City is also planning in their budget process that what they adopt in June is going to be a provisional budget, and that they're going to spend another 90 to 120 days coming back to their council with a final budget for the 21 year, which will give us another cut at what we think is going to happen in their 21 year. But it will also allow us to look at revenue projections and other needs that if we have flexibility with transit revenue, what we might need to put that towards. And we'll have to have those discussions.
What I'm cautioning is that I hear that the budget will be revisited in 90 to 120 days, which is a quarter to a third of the year. And we could waste a lot of money that we don't really need to during that period of time by running routes that we don't need, just because we've said, well, we're going to use the budget number of the money we'll have, not how much we ought to spend.
Chris, I understand your point. And that's why when I started in my preamble, so right now, I mean, today we're running the lowest level of transit service than we've probably run in a decade. I mean, just at today's level. And so in my preamble, we asked for this concession for 60 to 90 days. Concurrently with that, though, we are spending, and our service is reflective of probably of less than this, because we are providing such a low level of service, deferring any non-essential expenditures, non-essential capital expenditures, purchases, and equipment. And so, for example, this summer, much lower level of service, if we don't have the same level of events that we've had in the past, it doesn't require the same level of overtime. This recession mode that we're in terms of rigorous operational controls, very, very low level of service, we will derive savings through that are going to help advise and inform the next 9 months of the fiscal year. And so we needed to set a line in the sand somewhere, because I need to come in to my council with a budget to meet my statutory obligations. Knowing that we were going to have to come back and revisit it, and we were likely already achieving savings because of the recession mode that we're in during this time. I think if we go any deeper than this, we just don't have the information to go deeper than this. And to Tom's point, this was a little bit of my finance folks, a little bit of Matt's folks, and a lot of the transit folks thinking right off the top, out of the gate, what number can we come up with based on revenue projections on an interim basis? Concurrently, we are in full recession mode, probably the lowest level of transit services that we've had in a decade.
So I don't fault the need to get a budget approved, nor the using this as a placeholder. I would just ask, though, that we not wait 90 days to determine whether that's the right amount to spend. And it sounds like if JTAB met in June and said we want to cut these county routes further, that there'd be no problem in adjusting the services for which we're being projected to be billed, even though you've got a budget that shows a higher number that won't be adjusted for maybe 60 to 90 days after that.
That's correct. So, if the county came in tomorrow, presumably, and said, hypothetical, we're going to get rid of the Rainbow route. There might be a little downboarding time, but yeah, technically it's miles and hours and other aspects, and you get billed based on those. And so your expenditures would go down, your billing would go down accordingly.
Okay, thank you. I don't have a problem with this approach. I just want to see us really strategically look at what we're spending. I think this is, as you were credited with saying, this is a good chance to reboot, you didn't use that term, but to take advantage of the pandemic to refocus our business, to refine it, make it better. And this is certainly out of necessity, we ought to do it, but we can also make it better going forward.
We're done with this slide. Andy, could you go back to that last? Okay. So, yeah, go ahead and go on to the next one. So this is the variance that we're seeing in the roll-up areas of our budget for where we're going to find some savings. Contract services, consulting, software licensing, we're actually asking for an increase in that overall category because we have not allotted enough money in it as it is. That has various things in there like our air cards that give us the avail capability on our bus and our licensing with them, and that's a lot of that is rolled into the avail system. Our battery lease is included in here, which is quite an expensive expenditure. So even though we're overall reducing, we are shifting to beef up that line item a little bit just so it's more accurate and stays on budget. Materials, supplies, and services. This is where we would anticipate we could have a savings because we're not going to be recruiting like we have been. There'll be no travel. Training expenses should go down, uniform expenses, public notices. We've already seen some of those savings because we have gone to this drastically reduced service. We didn't print a summer writer's guide. So a lot of the savings are happening right now as we speak, but we see in the future there's more savings to be had. And then parts, maintenance, supplies, that's obviously something too. We would see some savings in that category. We're not going to have to do as much marketing or signage as we're in this kind of reduced service level. Personnel services, though, is the big hitter. That's where we're going to get the majority of our savings through overtime, eventually reduce headcount. Now we are holding on to approximately 20 positions that we technically don't need right now at this very reduced level. But as I've said, that's the strategy to save the money on the training and be ready for when we do beef up. But we're not going to be looking to hire 160 operators in the winter is our assumption at this time, like we were trying to do in prior years. So those unfilled positions will save us money and overtime because we can have a better shot at getting adequately staffed with reduced service. And then we've got, special service, contract miscellaneous charges. We anticipate the savings there. We've actually been a little over budgeted in that line item in the past. Utilities, it takes a while for this one to catch up with us. This is the electricity that charges the buses. So we're not seeing a savings yet due to the delay in the bills there, but one should be coming because of the much reduced service. And then the interfund transfers, at this point, we're just going to estimate those at the same level as years prior, although we would anticipate seeing a savings there, but we're just trying to be conservative. That's where the vehicle maintenance comes into play, the gas, expenditures for the support that we receive from the city to operate. So I think it's very conservative, the estimate we have in total, but it's 1.2 million in operating expenses that would be combined with the CARES money at 1.5 and the capital expenditure delays of 2.7 to make up for the 5.4. Are there any questions or comments on this slide?
So just a comment about the strategy. I think that the city's strategy here is to preserve as much service as possible, given what the demand is, but to preserve service and to try to retain workforce so that the city and the county are prepared to support the recovery of the economy and the resorts and workers. And so a big chunk of this is, reducing, realigning, delaying capital, and then to take advantage of some of that CARES Act funding. So that's kind of the philosophy, and I think it makes sense. You don't want to be in a position of having the whole resort economy saying, all right, we're ready to go back up, and then have transit say, okay, well, we need another 4 months, to gear up. So the balance here is heavy on short-term or one-time capital reductions and trying to maintain a reasonable level of service going forward.
So let me just project that. That's a very interesting point, Jerry, about business activity and what expectations will be, because it is possible that we get pushed very quickly through the stabilization phase of the governor's plan. And we're going to have to be, I don't know how to react to that yet. That's my basic message. So I think those are some internal discussions that we're going to have too, because if we get pushed and let's say that we're green by the fall, which means no risk or a very low level of risk, our resorts, our lodging, our restaurants are going to want to move. And so services around our government services, including public transit, are going to be challenged at that point.
Correct, and I think that's what we've been trying to be prepared for, yet be responsible financially, because it is not a faucet that you can turn on and off easily with trained operators ready to go. So I hope we have predicted and hit the right number. I feel fairly confident about it, but I have the same concern, Tom, that it'll be a quick ramp up and the expectations will be high. So we're doing our best to meet those needs while saving money in the meantime. Are there any other questions or comments on this slide? Okay. Andy, do you want to go to the next slide, please? The capital projects, as I stated earlier, that's something that we'd like to arrange a meeting next week and go over in more detail to understand the 2.7. But I know that Sarah wanted to speak to the slide in particular, so I'll go ahead and let Sarah take over.
Yeah, hi everyone. I wanted to make this specific note, this third bullet point here. We are going to Park City Council on Thursday with a staff report that's speaking specifically to capital projects across the entire organization. And there's a note in there about this budget realignment specific to transit. And I wanted to make sure that you understood what those numbers are so that it isn't confusing considering this conversation we've been having. So what we did is the budget department took all of our open grants and looked at what budget year they're tracking and realigned it to make sense. So like it's a big technical cleanup is basically what it is. We had grant dollars in one year, but the expenses hitting a different year. And it was a kind of a mess across the board. And because we've had to do this incredible scrutiny of our budget line items, the budget department had this opportunity to do a big cleanup. And so that's what these numbers are. This is not a budget cut in any of our capital projects. It's just simply a realignment to the correct budget years. So I just wanted to make sure that you were clear about what those numbers were, because we want to talk to you specifically about all the transit capital projects, and we're not making decisions without you. But I just wanted to be really clear about that one. Does that make sense to everyone?
I guess, Sarah, when I look at it, you're saying a negative 6.2 million in 2020 and negative 9 in 2021. Where is the offsetting pluses? In what years are the pluses that if it's not a cut? It's just a real adjustment. I mean, if you were shifting from 2020 to 2021, I would have expected to have seen, something on the order of 6 million, or the difference between those, or the sum of those showing up somewhere.
Yeah, you're right. And I believe that the majority of that is going to be hitting in 22 and 23. I don't have those specifics. They aren't outlined in our staff report, but I can get you that information. It's a really good question.
I mean, we can save that for when we meet. Isn't this the topic for next week's discussion?
Yes. So that's the next question that we wanted your input and feedback on is how, given our conversation, how do you want to move forward? We would like to propose a meeting as soon as the end of next week to review the budget in full and start talking about capital projects. We also have a big list of all of our open federal grants that we wanted to review with you. So just trying to map out the best path forward of what we want to talk about next week, which I know we need to, get clear on the budget because we have that deadline on us for our overall city budget. And then our June 9th, I think it's the June 19th meeting. Can't remember what the date is.
19th, I think. Let's see.
So Sarah, from my perspective, I think the two big, if we could have that next JTAB meeting within the next 2 week period, I think the final proposed budget with the items that you've outlined, and then a discussion about the ILA would be our two agenda items. Just making sure that we have information out to the public and to our JTAB elected membership well enough in advance that it can be studied.
Is there any chance we could meet later next week? Is that
Friday
is it
morning?
maybe late next week, like Thursday or Friday?
This is Steve. Let me just ask that part of that comes back to you guys on if you're going to give us this kind of detailed information, getting it the night before or something isn't sufficient. So I would throw it back to you on when can you get us a package and give us, 2 days to go through it, because everybody's already, pretty damn busy.
Yeah. No. So Sarah, do you think, working with Kim and Jerry and team would a Tuesday packet be possible, which gives us several business days, the long weekend, and then look towards a Friday meeting or something? Is that even doable?
Is the date you're
Could I
shooting,
jump in? Oh,
the date you're shooting for, Matt, is that Friday the 29th?
In concept, yes.
Concept, yeah. I mean, or Thursday. I'm just throwing stuff out there, knowing the importance of meetings. Sorry,
Hey.
did you want to jump in?
Yeah, Friday the 29th, that's not reasonable in my opinion. I have some fairly significant comments that I need to think through and discuss with Tom and review the information that staff shared with us last week. And in order to get your Park City staff useful information, I need a few days. We have the Transportation Commission Thursday and Friday, and then your staff is going to need a few days to respond to that. And I just think the 29th, I don't think we're going to have good information, decision-making information by the 29th available.
So Carolyn, what about the 2nd? What if we kicked it a couple more business days? Tuesday the 2nd, is that too soon? And just so you know, I'm not arbitrarily trying to force this on us. I'm just trying to also make sure it's somewhat compatible with the council budget process.
Sure. I appreciate those extra few days.
Yeah, the 2nd would work.
Or could we do something like, because we do have our regular JTAB meeting on June 16th. Could we use the June 16th meeting, Caroline, to talk about the federal grants and the ILA amendment, and then meet either next Friday or the 2nd to talk about the budget?
Well, I think the point with the grant part is that does have a determination on the budget. So we have to have that conversation in there.
I guess the question is, could we commit, we're going to find 2.7 million in the capital projects budget. We just don't know specifically which projects.
Is the question, do we want to have 2 separate meetings, one for the ILA and one for the capital projects? And do the former on the 16th of June and the latter on the 2nd, or whatever that date in early June is?
I mean, the bifurcation is probably more compatible with meeting the concurrent requirements of city councils adopting a budget mid-June, or kind of mid to late June. So that, I mean, just as purely a matter of function, that would be helpful. If you're willing, and technically it's up to you guys, that maybe there's a way to bifurcate the two, and definitely on the 16th lead with the ILA, but maybe we can tentatively schedule to meet on the 2nd about the budget again as a group.
And I think it would be okay to do that, as Sarah suggested, with a placeholder on the capital, as long as we don't put off that discussion too long.
No, I think we could talk about it on the 16th if we wanted to. I just think to give Caroline time to give us feedback on the grant spreadsheet, and to give you guys documentation that you can review well in advance. We could talk about all that on the 16th, and the 2nd would be budget with placeholder dollars that we're all committing to finding the detail coming on the 16th for that capital project section. That makes sense.
Understanding the time constraints we have and what we're dealing with there, yes, I think we can do that. I think we can do that, but I would also say that, then also reacting to the desire to dig into route efficiencies, that probably we probably can't do all of that. So route efficiencies are going to have to get held until after June 16th then.
Maybe that's July, that's the thrust of July as a hypothetical. So that's just 1 month into the new fiscal year.
Right.
I forget that we're really talking July 1, so my concerns about spending millions in the meantime are unfounded if we dealt with it early in the first month of the fiscal year.
Yeah, plus,
sorry, Kim.
So I think that tentative lineup works.
Should I try to summarize that?
Probably a good idea.
Okay, so, all right, I will summarize that as a group. The next tentative JTAB meeting focused on the budget is for Tuesday the 9th.
No.
No?
Tuesday the 2nd.
Really? Okay.
I would prefer the 9th if that was available.
Yeah, I was worried that we didn't have time. Is that works for Caroline and you? I missed that part.
I think we can make that work.
Okay. So
but I thought Caroline had we all have the transportation meetings.
I will make June 2nd work. It's more preferable than the Friday before. So if we need to do June 2nd, I can make that work. Thank you for the extra days.
Okay, so June 2nd for focus on the budget JTAB. And then on the 16th, we will focus on the ILA, JTAB.
And capital.
And capital. And maybe there's a chance we can hit some capital on the 2nd as well, but and capital. And then in July, tentatively, we'll focus JTAB on route running and efficiency and alignments in the work that, Jerry and Kim and them have been doing, and they can begin presenting the analysis to us and what we might have to discuss as a group.
That goes according to my notes.
Yes.
Can I please make one administrative request? Could we please have the Zoom appointments and login information in the calendar appointment rather than getting multiples? Because I think it's really causing a lot of confusion the morning of trying to log in. Thank you.
Amen.
Yes, we will make sure that happens.
The invite for this one should have been all in the calendar invite. Did that not work for you all?
It did, but we got about 4 calendar invites, and some were canceled
Okay.
and some weren't, and some had the Zoom information and some didn't.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, I'll make sure that it's just one calendar invite for the next one. I don't know how that happened. Maybe when I added people, it updated.
I think it needs to be in Cindy's invite, Andy. So we'll work through that on our end.
I think the
I have a
initial invite I had did not have it in, and then this morning I got ones from Cindy and Andy that did. Of course, I was already on the call at that point.
Okay, I apologize for the confusion. Are there any other comments about budget at this time? It sounds like we've got a game plan going forward. Okay, I think that was the last slide, Andy. Want to go on? I believe the next thing was ridership report. And Robbie, are you ready to talk to that?
Yeah, sure. We've been devastated in our ridership, down 81%. and also in our efficiency metrics. But the one thing I will note is in the efficiency metrics, yeah, if you go down one more page, you know, the cost per rider, we have not yet realized the cost savings as I think Kim mentioned earlier. You know, the electricity that we're being billed for was still from March, where we did still run, you know, reduced amount of service, but it was still fairly high. So, so we have, this is going to be probably the worst month would be my guess as far as the data. Because next month we will be seeing that we had, you know, April we did have reduced service, so all those expenses should be reduced by the amount that they have been reduced. And really, if anybody has any questions or any discussion points, I don't think there's a whole lot to say about it besides, wow.
Could you explain what in the top center where it says April ridership down 81% with a red arrow down, and then to the lower right of that it has 61.47 and 11.23. Those are dollars per what? Per hour?
That's the cost per passenger.
Wow. That's where some strategic thinking ought to be brought to bear. I mean, I know that, you know, down 81%, what do you expect? But are you saying 3 passengers per hour and 11 passengers per hour, and that our costs are those 61 and 11?
Yeah. So it's been again, this is the significant increase into the cost per passenger. I mean, I would assume that will continue, but not at such a dramatic increase, just because of the alignment of the actual costs that are being paid for in April.
Well, another point with that, Robbie, is that we've gone through at least 2 tranches of reduction of service, and probably these numbers don't reflect the full second tranche of reduction in services yet.
Exactly. So I mean, next month it won't look so bad, but it's still not going to look good.
Before the pandemic, on these routes, what were the typical costs per passenger? Are they
So in each of the bars in the chart on the bottom section, that's the 11/H is how many passengers per hour, and below that is the cost per passenger.
That's in the red is of course where we are now, but the green would, I mean the blue, like in that first column, the 10 white, where it said, where I assume the blue is 2019. It is. So it was $49 a passenger.
So the top numbers are for 2020, and then the numbers at the bottom are for 2019. So it went from last year in April, it was $11.43 per passenger on the 10 white, and this year it was $49.20.
Oh, okay. It's just kind of the opposite of what I would have thought, the way you.
Yeah, everything kind of got mixed around because usually all of the red routes are taller than the blue routes, but now it's all changed. So it is a little bit of a, it's a good point. It's a little bit of a confusing, I guess, visual design with the changes in the ridership totals.
Yeah, but I think Chris is looking for some historic perspective. And Chris, we're looking at April, and even April this year versus April last year, we're looking at, you know, off-season service. And these numbers are very different than the numbers that we would see in peak time service. Okay. So if you want to get sort of that broader perspective, you're going to have to look at sort of the full year. That'll give you a, you know, a normalized and averaged cost per passenger and that kind of stuff. That's not represented here. You're looking at off-season versus off-season in a pandemic, so that's having an impact as well. It's kind of compounding the issue.
So the 1143 in the first column, if we're looking at all of 2019, it'd be a lot lower number because it has some peak seasons, not just this shoulder season in April from last year.
So if you Robbie, if you go ahead one chart, it doesn't have the dollars, but it at least shows the difference in ridership where for the full year is the next page.
Andy, can you go down one more?
Yeah, so you can tell here, this is a whole year instead of being just 1 month, and you don't have dollars on this chart per rider, but you at least can see that you're getting, 25, 30 people per hour instead of 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see this chart with the dollars per rider on it.
Yeah.
Yes. The way that the way that we've been doing our data in the past, it does not reconcile in a way that I can come up with a clean cost per rider for each of these routes. And that's just because of, we did a lot of combining of routes in our reporting previously, and it's just not possible for me to undo that. So as we move forward though, once we get to a place where, historically over this kind of time frame where we've been reporting them all separately, then the cost per rider will be able to be added into this visual. So as we get to that place, I will for sure add that.
How many months away are you from reaching that point, Robbie? Are we a couple of months or 6 months or 9 months?
So for this report, it's looking at 2 separate years, so it might be, I want to say, if I had to guess, I'd say it's like 6 months.
Okay, you've got to have clean data, apples to apples comparison for 2 complete years, and we're 6 months away roughly from doing that.
Yeah, that would be my estimation.
Right, got it.
If there's no more, are there any other comments or questions on the ridership? Andy, if you go down one more, the feedback is, I want to just point out one thing that I think is the most significant, and that is the amount of positive feedback representing 12% over that time period. I don't think we've ever been above like 1 and 2%. So, it's not a really solid data point, but I think it does indicate that our level of customer service and engaging with the community, things like that, has it's improved, and it shows.
I was going to say either that or we need to review how much we're paying people for positive feedback.
The people generally only comment when they want to complain, and so it's positive feedback is if things go well, it's like if the water turns on, I don't send the water company a thank you. It's when it doesn't work that I'm pissed off.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that feedback came with regards to some of the changes in service that we implemented. We had quite a few people, commenting about that. And then the other thing that we had a lot of, app equipment issues, and that was that had to do with an update that they had done on the app, and it did not go through for a lot of people. So we heard about that quite a bit. And that's about it I have for those reports, unless anybody has any questions.
Okay, this is Kim. I got officially booted off the internet, so I'm on the phone now. So if there's no other questions, that is everything we had on our agenda for today. And we will get that next meeting scheduled on the 2nd. And I cannot see you, so I don't know if anybody else has anything they'd like to add.
I just want to say thank you. And thanks, Tim, for bringing up the question on doing the deep dive into routes. That's actually a request that we've been making for quite some time. So I really look forward to us getting the data we need to thoroughly analyze those routes and look at if there are better configurations, and then also, of course, timing of the service and connections. So look forward to those discussions. And of course, more on the budget. That'll be ongoing.
Kim, do we, just to make sure that we actually have a good meeting for that when we get out, I know it's July, but does our staff know, when you talk about we need more data to make those decisions, is there an explicit list of stuff that you guys are looking for? I just want to make sure we don't walk in and it's, you know, not a productive meeting.
I think our staff has provided pretty detailed requests to the Park City staff on what's needed for those to be able to do that work. Caroline, do you want to add anything to that, or Jamie?
No, that covers it.
Okay. Well, I guess if there's nothing further, then we can adjourn the meeting.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Kim.
Thank
Good work.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.